Hi, it's Ileana at Awakening Cosmic Reality Show, and today I have Tony Rodrigues with me. We're going to discuss his beautiful books, Ceres Colony Cavalier, and his newest book out right now, Project Starmaker. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's been a long time, and I'm so happy to be back and spend time with you. How you been?
I'm good. A lot of stuff happening, so much good disclosure going on. Um, so much good things about the SSP being revealed. That's fantastic. And experiences. People are just genuinely sharing and experiencing. And you've released two beautiful books sharing your stories. Would you like to discuss the first book and the second book, please?
Yeah, absolutely. For anybody that doesn't know, the first book was Ceres Colony Cavalier. Got that here, and I worked on it. It's basically the sum of my memories that I got back of my service in space. So being taken into uh, more than one program. So that's the difference between me and I guess a lot of people that are taken into programs. I was taken in, the kind of the side door. And so I went from one program to the next, and I had time on Earth. And so the book tells that story, makes sense of it, in a linear fashion. And it was most of the story. I want to say towards the end of it, when we were writing the final chapters, I kept wanting to add more. There was more to add. And there comes a time when, you just got to finish the painting. You can paint it for your whole life, and you just have to, we had to go with, I thought to myself, if I don't get it out now, I'll never get it out if I don't do it now. And so I did, and it was well received, and it's got a lot of great reviews, a few bad reviews. Some people, you know what I mean, can't, it's tough. There's some tough pills to swallow in that book. And the second book is a lot less traumatic, but still some very hard pills to swallow, I think. And that's Project Starmaker. So it's the sequel. It's thinner. It's only it's a collection of stories that basically revolve around the story in this book. So there were side stories, things that I couldn't really include, and things that basically, whenever I did an interview I started doing interviews in 2016. Me and you we go way back. And, you were one of the first testimonies that came out as well. And when I started doing interviews, people just didn't ask about really the spiritual side of things or really the woo stuff. So that's what Starmaker is kind of fills in those, and there's a few questions in there from the first book that people kept asking over and over again. And so we tried to address that. And then there's a short stories, and then Jackie Kenner, who's an absolutely brilliant person. I mean, she's amazingly brilliant. I can't stress it enough. She had her own take on things. That we were doing our show Talks with Tony. She was my co-host, and we would meet every Saturday or every other Saturday. And at the end of the show, or before the end, when you're off camera, that's when you catch up. And we would talk, and she said, Tony, she would ask me, like, how did you know that? What did this? She would ask me questions about the book, and we'd talk. So how did you know that? I said, well, from Peru. The time in Peru, there was actually, I had access to a lot of uh, near-death memory. So for lack of a better term, for near-death memories. So um, she said, this is the story you need to tell, Tony. This is really what needs to get out. And I said, well, I got to get my book out. When the YouTube scrubbings began, I worked on the book like 6 years. It's painful. It was painful to relive it all. It just was. I was greatly abused in my time up there. Um, but when the YouTube videos started to go, I thought, oh God, I better get a book out. We put a lot of work into this, you and I, through the years. I've watched you, you watched me, we, parallel. There's a lot of work that goes into making a ton, hundreds of videos, thousands of hours that we've done, and to see some of it go away or half of it just disappear. I was almost in a panic. I thought, wow, because, I really feel that it's valuable. Both our testimonies are valuable for people in the future, because they're going to give us a sanitized version of disclosure in the beginning, obviously. And so it's important to tell the real story. You know what I mean? Just you can't make an informed decision without the truth. And so it's important. I feel that our testimonies are very important to get out to
Oh,
the world.
oh, indeed. And what is Ceres Colony Cavalier about? Can you share some of the experiences, the highlights of the most important stuff in the book?
It starts out at the very, very beginning when I was a kid, when I was a school kid, and how that relationship, how people I met influenced me being taken as a form of punishment. I was abducted and put into, they call it the 20 and back, or the career. It's really accurately the career return program. I'm going to get a career, and not necessarily. But taken for 20 years and then put back the same day. So taken and lived, and then through radical technological means, time travel and other things with consciousness transference, probably human cloning, put back then the very next day. And so I was taken, I looked back, and the weather. So in the book, at the end, I talked about the rain. The rains came, it rained, and it was cold. It was in the 40s. I was in southern Michigan, and it was in the 40s and 50s for the whole 2 weeks before. And then the rain came, and it warmed up to the 60s on that Saturday. And I was able to look back in the records and it was exactly the time that I remember. I think it was like April 17th, 1982. I could be wrong about the day. It might have been the April 12th. It was like somewhere in there. It was a sad. I was introduced to somebody. One of the boys in school said his dad was an Illuminati, and I was introduced to him on a Wednesday, and he pointed me out to him and said, "Dad, that's that boy I told you about. He didn't like me." And I was taken on a Thursday night. The next night, I woke up with ETs in my room that took me, and I lived for 20 years from program to program, and eventually on Ceres, the planet Mars, the moon, places in Peru, in California, and in Seattle. And eventually on Ceres, where I spent the bulk of my time, over a decade there, working on different ships. I was ship maintenance on a deep space ship, and then I was a cargo engineer on an interstellar, actually intergalactic trade ship, for the Ceres Colony Corporation. So the solar system is divided into corporate entities that the humans have built out over the last 100 years. So the Ceres Colony Corporation, the bulk of that time, at the very end, I was a cargo engineer. I got promoted enough to where, I don't want to say it was enjoyable, but it was less crappy. It was less terrible. And I felt that I went a long ways from being slave labor to having somebody that had a bit of freedom. It was an accomplishment for me. But anyhow, then they put me back, and the book tells the whole story. So what's nice about that, I mean, and as anybody, a lot of people that have gone through the same thing. And it's very hard for people to get a linear account, because there's just so much. When you say, what'd you do for the last 20 years? There's just so much there that most people that I speak with, I do consultations with people, and it's a bottleneck of information that they just, they go, well, this happened, and wait, but this and this happened, because they're giving you things that are related over a 20-year time, and then they go back, and then so it's hard to make sense of it. So the one thing that I was I don't want to say super proud of, but the one accomplishment of the book was that it tells it in a linear fashion, because I took so long to write it, over 6 years to sit and write it. So I got my memories back, things filled in, people would ask me in interviews. And so over time, it took a linear shape. And so it's for people that don't understand what the phenomenon is or what it was like to experience it. My book is a good template for them to understand what happened to you, what happened to other people. And it kind of explains the tech a little bit. So that was the bulk of the story. And like I said, towards the end, we started putting together the series time, and there were things that I don't want to say I cut them out because they mattered, but it was just that it just didn't flow with the story. And especially the Starmaker incident, where there was a separate 10 years. I was sold off, and it was a completely different technology. So they put us in a clone body that wasn't a human body. It was a watered down, like an adolescent body of another species. So the consciousness, it didn't take a lot of the consciousness to run it. And so that, so it was doable. They said that if we were taken and you were more than 20 years at the time in the tech that I was being used, that you had a high risk of mental problems. So that was the tech that I was, probably a cloning version. So there's more than one way to skin that cat, definitely. I was taken, and it was toward the end of the 20 years. When I sit and really look at it, build out my timeline and really look at when Starmaker happened, I think it was right at the end of my time on the submarine ship when I was ship maintenance. was towards the end of those years, right before I got promoted to cargo engineer. But I was taken, it was about 10 years, and it was in a different distant galaxy for a organization that was galaxy wide and probably multiple galaxies that built macro objects. They built planets and stars and mostly rings around stars. And so it was a galaxy that had a low amount of star formation. And so they were really trying to figure out how to build a star and have it stabilize quickly. So stars, when they ignite, are unstable. They expand and contract, and they give off waves, a lot of energy, and then they expand and contract for the first few million years before they stabilize, if they stabilize. And so they were really trying to advance the star building technology to get a star to stabilize in 100,000 years, and they could immediately start building their ring around it. And it just tells that story and a few other stories. And then in your life, so things are parallel. You tell me what you think. Things that happen in one thing you have other things in your life that happen that are parallel. There's like a cord that goes through your life where things all connect that may seem like they're not connected.
Oh, yes, definitely. And how you express the fact how important it is to create the timeline, the dreams, the time sequencing, because there could be extraterrestrial interactions, there could be human secret space program interactions, different bases, different facilities, ships. And when the memories come in, they come in like a floodgate that opens up. And then you're like, I'm getting flashes, this, and this, and you start writing it all out. Then you might get some dissonance and some blocks, and you're like, why can't I think what's going on here? And it's the memory block that doesn't want you to remember what you need to remember, the importance of it, what happened, when, why, who, where, and then you start to slowly organize it the best way you can, years, dates, places, off world, on world, because some of these programs are on Earth as well.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Quite a bit of the world, there's an Earth Colony Corporation probably that's classified that way. That's important that you said that. And then when you say the memory blocks, I haven't remembered all of it. I know that there's plenty more that I don't remember. There just has to be. And I've never claimed to know it, to remember it all. The disadvantage that we have is that it's very hard to find people to speak to and reminisce. So if you meet somebody from school, from your grade school, and those memories are blocked as well, by natural means, they're blocked, but you can meet somebody else and you start talking and you can reminisce, and you find your way to the memories if somebody else remembers it, and you go, oh, and then they all come back. Don't you remember our science teacher? He was so cool. Remember? I don't remember. What was his name? And then it all comes back to you because somebody else can give that to you. People that taken in these programs don't have that luxury. You don't meet people and you don't strike up a conversation about what we were doing on Mars or in between. It's very rare. A lot of people have memories that gel, so they experience it. I think that there's a real phenomenon, and I think most of the time it leads to mistaken memories where they gel and go, it must have been you. But there are millions of people up there. There are millions of people. The odds of everybody meeting everybody is very rare. But I think that because the memories are blocked with a technology and that they're there wanting to get out, plus somebody else has their memories, that it's like a vent and there's an immediate connection there. You go, I know it was you. I know it was you. And it may have been, and I don't want to call anybody bad, but I'm saying I've noticed that there's a very real, phenomenon where people connect when they hear my memories. Their memories come out in that way. It's because we don't have people to reminisce with. We just, you know what I mean? You just can't, you're never going to go back down that street on Mars, right?
No.
You can't drive down that street and go and ring the bells that you get your memories back. So it's a natural way for it to come out in different ways. It's just
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
And when you said they come in waves like a flood, like that's exactly how I remembered it. It was big chunks at a time, like not just remembering an afternoon, but remembering 6 months of memories all at one boom. And it was like a chunk of memories where I'd go, whoa, that's when there's no way that happens in a dream, right? It's
Exactly.
not a dream. You can't have 5 years of dreams happen in one dream, right?
No. Plus all the tech and the terminology for me is like, holographic technology, medical pods, healing, domed bases on the moon, on Mars, being trained, lunar space operations. What kind of ETs are out there? What can you expect when you're out in space? Like actual introduction, first on the moon, what you can expect in your other service, what you'll do. So it's
Hmm.
like you're pre-prepped, pre-trained on the moon first, and then you go out further on Mars and other places, serving on ships, serving on planets. Some people are support staff, some people are maintenance, some people are super soldiers or soldiers, some people are slaves.
Hmm.
It depends what they put you in or what you're skilled at to do.
Yeah, and that just shows there's a great deal of infrastructure built out there. So disclosure is going to have to cross that bridge. You know, they're going to give us, yeah, ETs exist, and then we'll get this is an ET, and then this is, and oh, voila, we have giant bases built on Mars and throughout on the back of the moon. There's a giant complex. There's cities, and they're going to have to cross that bridge in one form or another.
Yeah, right now they're crossing the bridge. Hey, we have reverse engineering programs and we have some ET craft, non-human intelligences, we have some bodies. There's whistleblowers coming out because there's whistleblower protection now. If you experience something, if you have real evidence, you can come out to Congress and you're supposed to be protected, but people, there's still retaliation against people. So now it's like there's these reverse engineering programs from Lockheed Martin, other Black Ops military sites, Area 51. There's retrievals of crashed UFO crafts, UAPs, whatever you want to call it. The terminology even changes to make it sound more acceptable. It's a science. UFOs exist. It's a science. There's military videos. They're grainy, but they've been released in 2017. So I think they're coming out with phase disclosure. Hey, extraterrestrial technology and these beings exist. Who specifically, not yet, but hey, it exists, and now it's time for you to start knowing about it.
It it's hilarious to me that people don't grasp the magnitude of the UAP disclosure of what they said, how big that is. They go, yeah, well, it's probably us. That it's a secret, but the people don't understand that the science behind the performance of the UAPs means that we can access space very quickly, the moon very quickly, other planets, Mars very quickly. That all the rocket program is completely obsolete. And people aren't putting that together. So even if the UAPs are the Russians or the Chinese or somebody, that means that they can build buildings on other planets in our solar system very simple, very easily with that technology, with that amount of performance. So people aren't putting that together, and it's just like it's met with a sigh, basically a collective sigh, like okay. And it's not until we get some actual ETs that we can look at that people are going to put two and two together, and the shock I think will set in, you know. But they're getting ready. There's been big things happening, like even the last few weeks. I keep hearing rumblings of this huge military maneuver. It's how I am. You're still in. You're not in. You're in Canada, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
Have you heard of anything with the military up there at all? Any rumors?
Well, supposedly we had something that was taken out February above us in the Yukon, near Alaska, Yukon, two probes taken out. They were looking for four secret bases under Alaska. It was
Oh wow.
probing for something, and it was shot down.
Hmm.
It was
Well, I
shot
mean,
down. So
just recently. So where I live kind of Michigan. I live in Michigan, and it has a map. Everybody has a map of Michigan on their left hand, and I live where the ring finger would be, where the ring would go. So that's about where I
mhm.
live. Most of the military presence in Michigan is over here, so on the east side of the state. And recently, I've been seeing a lot of helicopter squadrons. I mean, dozen helicopters flying over, and I've heard ramblings of people that are in the military that just in the last few days that like something like 30 states are on alert.
Oh,
We've heard ramblings of people that are in Space Force saying the Space Force is dark, no communications in or out of Space Force. This is all just this week. So I mean, these are rumors. Who don't know? You know, like I personally don't know. I'm hearing it third person, but I'm hearing it from people that are completely trustworthy. And so we're living in time like with this disclosure, with the amount of things that have just come out recently. We had the Dr. Greer's press club, which I think was a long overdue to come
Yes.
out and happen. Like he had it in 2001, the last one. I wish they could have had it every year since and pushed Congress to actually admit this. But it seems like they kind of dusted him off the shelf and revamped it, and now they're back. So that's when we see these things, I'm happy because I think that even if we get a pack of lies about ET disclosure, even if we get the most lies and just this horrible sanitized version, it doesn't matter. Once the genie is out of the bottle, that we're not alone, that ETs are in our solar system, that we can access other planets, that they're intelligent. Once that genie's out of the bottle, it's not going to matter what their lies are. It's only a matter of time until we discover it all for ourselves. So once the technology begins to filter down and the awareness of it all, the lies are only going to be a speed bump.
Yeah, and I don't think they can get away with that false flag alien invasion. I don't think they can get away with that because I think Dr. Greer is trying what he's trying to do with this disclosure project work. Plus, he actually counseled David Grush, the recent whistleblower who came out. Dr. Stephen Greer said he spent time with him and he prepped him for disclosure. So,
Interesting.
disclosure about reverse engineered crafts being in black ops facilities, that being done, plus the crash site retrievals of crafts. I think Dr. Greer helped out David Grush with some of that intel to bring that forward. Is when you have 145 bases all over the states and in other places, plus directed energy beam weapons in other places like Antarctica and other cloning facilities, Antarctica and everywhere else. You can't hide that forever. The genie comes out of the bottle. Like in Canada, British Columbia, where I am, there's a lot of reports about triangular black craft TR 3Bs and 6s. Like it's reported on the maps. Alberta, Surrey, BC, Kelowna, and I lived in Kelowna for several months. Every night I would photograph a triangular craft of some sort hovering above the house. So there's a base somewhere near there. There's a lot of activity, UFO activity where I am. Like every night you could photograph something when you go out.
I think there's a lot of hot spots. It's really ramping up. I think most people just don't look up. Most people are somewhere cold at night and don't go outside and they don't look up. We're all looking at our screens, and they've pretty much gotten very bold in the skies where they tried to stay at high altitude and not do it. Like they're very active now, both human craft and ET craft. It would seem there are places where I just hear about people seeing stuff all that, and now we're starting to see people with their pictures. They're like they're standing arm in arm in front of the rock or whatever they're posed, the statue, and you see a craft in the background. Like these are starting to come out and be more and more common. So they're getting bold with it. They're gonna give us something here. It's gonna be a very interesting time. So
I agree with you. And I think that Courtney Brown, Farsight Institute, that was amazing. The fact that he did remote viewing on Ceres Colony Cavalier, the book about your mantid experiences on Mars and Ceres. That's amazing confirmation.
Every little bit of confirmation is just every little thing that's ever shook out that I talked about that later got researched and turned out to be true really made me give me a day of just not even touching the ground. I was dancing on air because and as well as this, speaking publicly about this for the last 7 years hasn't been without its price. Like you have been attacked by people, I have been attacked by people, my family's been attacked, my children have been attacked in school, on and on. So there's a price to pay by holding your ground and saying, look, this is what I saw. You can't explain this is my proof. You have to explain that away before I go away. And a lot of people aren't mature enough to really just think beyond that. And so anytime something does check out like that, it really is like a breath of fresh air. It's just like a Band-Aid over those emotions. But he did that, and I didn't know about Farsight before that. So people started emailing me and going, have you seen the Farsight interview? Look at Farsight. They did you, man. It's amazing. And everybody, so like, seriously, for like 2 weeks, I never even looked at it. And I was like, well, you know, you got to pay to get in there. And then I got an email from Courtney Brown. He got my email through a third party and he emailed me. He said, I'd love to talk sometime. We did you. And I said, okay. And we did a phone call for a couple hours and really I learned a lot. And he's a very, very smart man. And the Farsight Institute is very accomplished. I was in San Jose. I did a conference in San Jose last year in Silicon Valley, and somebody called in, one of the internet people, while I was on stage, said, what about the Farsight Institute? And the scientists on stage said, oh, Farsight's been debunked, that they were not real. But I'll tell you what, myself, I have a remote viewing group on my Patreon channel, and we meet a couple times, you know, three times a month probably. We use the Farsight protocol, among others. We study all the ways of remote viewing. We use the Farsight protocol, and it's accurate. There's no way statistically, even when we don't do it all the way, even when we do just a blind target and we pick it, there's no way statistically that we could be as accurate as we are. Sometimes people nail it right on the head, and it's a completely blind. There's absolutely no way that they could have any hint of what the target is. And people are constantly drawing the similar shapes that are the target, similar aspects of the target. Some people get very detailed. So the Farsight Institute, as far as I'm concerned, the debunkers have been debunked.
The Farsight Institute method works because I learned it 7 years ago and I've been doing remote viewing for 7 years. Some of mine is spontaneous, some of mine is with keywords, with numbers. There's different ways of how you can remote view, like the tools and the procedures and protocols. You shouldn't know what the target is, of course, no, you shouldn't. But you get inklings, you get information when you go deep into a subject. Your mind does not become distracted. You let go of everything and you focus on a target, and the writing starts, the drawings start, and then you can get many targets, so many different targets and information about subjects. I just finished a whole book, Remote Viewing Antarctica, Directed Energy Weapons, Cloning, and just published that. Half the book is remote viewing those targets, and the other is finding scientific research to try and make sense of everything that was remote viewed after the remote viewing is done. Because people are saying, how can any of this be true, what you remote viewed? How do you know? I mean, I don't. I wanted the scientific evidence. How is it possible to make something that is a science array into an energy weapon, or something that tracks UFOs or communicates with different vessels out in space? It's possible. It can be done. The science is there. So it's like what you think is unreal can be very real because it's covered up and it's hidden in black ops projects or weird experiments.
As far as I've gone in my testimony, I still to this day, sometimes I think about it and I go look and I go, wow, it's real. And it still kind of shocks me. I still get that shock of it where I kind of wish it wasn't sometimes. But it's back to the Farsight thing. So Dr. Courtney Brown was very gracious and very, very, very forthcoming. And we talked, like I said, and I was able to go in there and see their testimony of Ceres Colony. The thing that he said privately was that he's some people can sit and watch YouTube videos and they don't want to read a book. And some people are the opposite. They'd rather not sit through a video and read a book. And he said he was of the latter. And he said he had heard my story through people people that he works with. And he said, okay, but he didn't want to sit and watch a video. So when the book came out, he got somebody, I don't know if it was a gifted to him, he bought the book. And when he read the book, he said the thing that caught his eye, why he decided to choose it as a target for the Farsight Institute, was the behavior of the ETs. He said that many times in the past, he's been at it for years, that many times in the past, the ETs that they remote viewed, they have certain personality aspects, the behavior. And he said that my book was he said your description of the way the aliens behaved, certain species, the way that they behaved was exactly what he had found in previous remote views. So that's why he went further and did it. And it all happened without my knowledge. Like that was what's great about a book, is you kind of let it go, and it does its own, it has its own life.
Exactly. I mean, I've released 2 SSP books with my experiences, and then recently I went back and remastered a book into a smaller format to be more concise. And ETs behave like there's human-run ET programs with humans and ETs, and there's the SSP programs with the ET stuff being run. I was exposed to Nordics on Mars bases, and they created advanced implant technology that exists on 4-5D, and it's inserted in your brain. It opens up, it augments your abilities, psychic abilities. You get to interact with holographic technology, get to remote pilot different crafts and ships. You're not on it, but through the holographic tech and the implants, you're piloting something and experimenting on new tech that's 300 years more advanced than what we have here. People, researchers have done that research. Nordics are working with human SSPs. That was in my experience on Mars. There's these advanced crafts. It's connected to implants. It's connected to various warp drives. That's all out there. I saw that on Mars. They can replicate spaceships without the nuts and bolts, without putting parts together anymore. One big spaceship can be replicated through replication tech. I have memories of that. You cannot unexplain that away when it's plausibly explainable.
There is such compartmentalization. Blah, what a big word that is. Compartmentalization of the projects that alludes to, you know, it masks it even for researchers, from people that are experiencers. You come back and you tell your things you remember, and then the next colony over is so compartmentalized and at a different level of doing things. Like just the architecture. Like I said, I didn't go through just one place. I hit a couple stops, but the architecture was completely different from one underground city to the next. It was completely different. Completely different aesthetic, different technology, all of it. And so when people research it, so it's one thing that it just lends to the what's the word I'm looking for? It lends to the discreditation of people. Discreditation. Is that a word? I don't know. It lends to the discrediting of people that speak about it, people that are witnesses, because they know that witnesses do, like us, slip through the cracks. You know, for every one of us, there's a million people that don't remember a thing. And which is sad. Very sad. Or they do remember and they just can't make sense of it. It's not enough. So a lot of people have one or two really fragmented memories, and it's just not enough to make a, you know, to write a book on, or at least stand up and go through the, frankly, the ridicule. You know, you have to be able to support yourself. There are people very critical out there, and I found that the people that are critics usually are not open to any kind of debate. It's too late with them. When a critic steps up, it's too late, and they're already over emotional and biased. So you can't really, even if you have pictures from your time on Mars on your phone, they wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, CGI can do the best interpretation of what you experienced, or Mid-Journey AI can create such a holographic image of you, and that's you, even though that's not you. It's a good copy, but it's not you. Technology is advancing so much, and where does that come from? From the ETs.
Sure. Well, and the colonies, so they're just trickling it down. They're venting it off to us a little at a time. And there were even, I go through and watch some of the old movies from the 50s, the old sci-fi movies. Well, here's why. Nowadays, you can see the programming.
Mhm.
So the kids don't see it, but we as adults know what we got programmed with back in the 80s and 90s. And now the programming is another level of advanced. So you go, wow, they are really programming. You know, this media is really getting me to become biased, or make me angry, or make me attracted to something that I don't want to be biased or attracted to. And so you look at the programming. So what I thought to myself was, now that they really went into overdrive, and I don't even have to say when, you guys all know when they started, when they really went off the rails in recently, and the subject matter for that. But I thought, man, I'm going to look back and see if they were doing programming back in the 50s and 60s in the old sci-fi. And sure enough, they were plausible deniability. They were giving us breadcrumbs of what was really going on as they were building the infrastructure back then. In the 50s and 60s, there was a secret space program. They had anti-grav craft. They had the triangles already. McDonnell Douglas was already contracting and making anti-grav craft that could go to the moon. And then in conjunction with ETs, they had craft that could take us to Mars and beyond. And so back then, in order for us to not naturally remote view it, because that's what most people do when you dream as a collective consciousness, you're remote viewing what's going on by the rest of us. In a sense, it is true where we go one, we go all, because your subconscious speaks. We all communicate subconsciously. So in order to appease that, they would make movies so that your subconscious would go, oh, it was just that movie. It wasn't actually somebody walking on Mars seeing a bug. It was a movie with the guy on Mars with these giant paper mache bugs, whatever. So that's what they were doing. They were fully aware of the consciousness. Consciousness is itself a technology that we have been kept in the dark about. That's why the psychic ability, the remote, that's why somebody on stage next to me in San Jose said that Farsight had been debunked when they clearly are not debunkable because anybody can do it.
Yeah, I've done remote viewing where I've seen sky cities on Jupiter and bases on Ganymede. I've seen military facilities near on Jupiter, floating cities, ships that fly that can dock with cities above the clouds of Jupiter. So there's infrastructure on Jupiter, on Ganymede. There's infrastructure on Io.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of different human-made and ET bases on the moon, Mars. I remote viewed the moon, and it has space engines that are there inside the core of the moon. It's not a space rock. It is.
I believe, in my opinion, the moon is like a tractor, and the moon can move planets they can turn the gravity on and off, and they can put it next to your world and then not rotate with it evenly and pull it. I mean, think about how devastating that is to drive the Earth into the sun, or at least out of the habitable zone in either direction. They can pull the Earth out where it's cold and everybody dies off, or put it in. And other moons around, like there's no explanation for why there are two moons around Mars. There's no science that says that Mars could have captured those two moons. It doesn't make sense, because those are probably along the same lines. They can move. These are tractors that can come into and terraform an entire solar system. Again, like I said, that lends to the subject matter of Project Starmaker, is that we called it the Bureau because I didn't really have the name of it. I just named it the Bureau. Was a giant corporation that built macro objects like planets and solar systems and stars, and they would use things like the moon as a tractor to move them around, to move giant objects around. And when you think about that, the other thing is, think about the moon coming closer to the Earth for a few days, for 40 days and 40 nights. It would flood. It would cause a giant flood that would happen. You could flood the Earth and wipe, and then put it away again, and then everything would go back to normal, but all of civilization would have been flooded. You'd need to put everybody in a boat, like an ark.
Yeah, space ark, the ark ships, those exist too. I remote viewed Atlantic ark ship. That is incredible. The Venus ark ships. There's so many different ark ships on the moon, on the Mars, on Earth, Venus. There's beings living underground on Venus, very spiritual beings. Venus has
I
a lot
imagine
of
Venus
stuff.
is very so I remember that, with the Ceres Colony Corporation, that we weren't allowed to go to Venus. We did not have, there was a state of I don't want to say a state of war, but like a state of friction between that colony and Venus. We were not allowed to ever go to Venus or Saturn. We did go to Saturn and fly by, but we weren't allowed in Saturn's airspace. We went there to Enceladus, I believe that's around Saturn, to watch the geysers, and just did a flyby. But other than that, we weren't allowed around Saturn.
There's a lot of spiritual tech on Saturn and Venus, a lot of ancient builder race technology that can literally reformat how things are created in creation itself. So there's like super protected areas where people can't go because of certain things that are there. That they don't want misused or misappropriated for something that nobody should have access to. We should know about this, but it's being kept secret from us. So when do we become the galactic civilization that we deserve to be?
It's a kind of a chicken and the egg thing. I was talking about this with somebody the other day. When you look at the bulk of society, a lot of people are still very barbaric. I mean, let's just be honest. When you look at, in a city, you go to any major city in the world, really, not all of them, right? But there are some that are very civilized, but there's still people that are still victimizing each other over the money, over resources. There are people that victimize each other. There is, a great deal of people that are victimized, and I don't want to start throwing out social causes. But what I'm saying is, I think the main reason is people aren't brought up to believe that they should be, what the reward is for being moral, what the reward is for participating and not victimizing people. And because we don't have any real role models. And once we get contact, we can see ETs, we're going to aspire to be like them. When we see humans, just humans, like exactly like us, come from an advanced planet and see how they behave, we're going to want to do, it's monkey see, monkey do. We're going to want to say, well, I'd like to go there, and I'd like to be part of that society. And people are going to mimic the behavior, or at least aspire to. We'll start to get influences in a positive way. And I think the whole of humanity would change in one generation. You could stamp out a lot of violence and a lot of ill will that people have inside of one generation. All they need is hope, and I think a lot of people don't have it. They don't have hope, so they go, why not? Or they're not raised. There's not emphasis on raising people. In fact, there's emphasis on raising people to be brutalized, to be traumatized, so that we are divide and conquer, basically. So I think that, what I'm saying is, on one hand, you've got people saying we shouldn't get contacted because we're not ready, because we're violent. And on the other hand, we should be, if we were contacted, we wouldn't be as violent, is what I feel. And so I think that contact should happen. I think that disclosure should happen. All changes for the better, and mankind just needs its back cracked. That's it.
We need the truth. We need to know everything, and disclosure has so many different parts to it. There's the secret space programs, there's the ETs, there's the crafts, advanced tech, cleaning up the pollution on this planet. We have 0 point energy. We have 0 point tech that can literally change us overnight. Remove pollution.
Yeah. They've actively suppressed it. That's not even a conspiracy theory. There's a great deal of evidence. They've actively suppressed free energy or cheap energy. And so that would change a lot of things too. So I think we're in the throes of it. I think both the good and bad guys, what people call them, the white hats and the dark hats and the gray hats, people that are floating, I think all of them are on the same page of fast tracking society so that it's ready to disclose, that we can see, an intergalactic glimpse into one version of intergalactic society. And I think once that happens, it's only a matter of time until everything sorts out. You can't just enslave a world forever when we're aware of the real nature of the cosmos, that it's actually very populated.
Yeah, and it's not just a human template. Most ETs are human looking with variation of skin color, height, whatever. That 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, that human template. But there's other exotic looking ETs, aquatics, fishtail, mermaids. That's not a myth, that's a reality. You can genetically create a lot of different advanced template structures of genes.
Absolutely. There are many different versions of us. There are many versions of us that are slightly different. All of them have like a different shaped forehead, but they're people just like us. The cosmos are dense. The life is teeming out there. There are many Earths, Earth-like worlds. They're everywhere. And it's sad that most people don't look up into the sky anymore. Really, there's not a lot of emphasis on astronomy, which is terrible, which leads to the whole flat Earth BS. Knowledge of astronomy is the end of the flat Earth debate. So it's that simple. So a lot of people just are unaware of the reality of astronomy. And you can do it by yourself. You can get a small telescope and go in your backyard and solve the mysteries of the shape of the Earth.
Well, the rising of the sun and then the setting of the sun and the moon, those are not holograms. Those are real things that you see up in the sky. They're circular.
Yeah. Well, and then so a lot of people they say, well, it's a giant screen up there, but there's something called parallax where you could use two telescopes the same way that we use our eyes to tell the distance for
Mhm.
somewhat for to make the wastebasket in the room to make the shot. Your eyeballs, they can use two telescopes, and you can clearly see with your own eyes that there are objects that they are distant. So the stars can't move all. The one guy there was a flat Earth thing, and these are fun to talk about after you calm down because you're so incensed over the stupidity of it. One guy said the Earth isn't moving, the stars are moving around, that the whole thing is moving around and the Earth is flat and stationary. And I said, and I thought, and I didn't say it because I wasn't going to have the whole talk, but with astronomy, you can look with your own eyes and you can do something called stellar drift, and you can it's very simple. And you can even look at giant professional telescopes. You can log out of their website, but that means that the stars, at the distance they are, and other ones that are closer, we know that means that they would go several times faster than the speed of light to cover the distance of the sky at night. So it's
Mhm.
absolutely preposterous. It's just no way. There's just no way. So I think people should do astronomy more. And honestly, there's a lot to look at nowadays with this. When you talk about Starlink and all the new satellites, there's a lot going on in the sky. It doesn't take long on a clear night to see some cool stuff going by.
Everything in space moves. Time is not linear in space. Time is sort of linear on planets, but it's different when you're moving in space.
Mhm.
Nothing holds still. Like, I mean, there's exoplanets, habitable zones, and habitable zones. Planets move out of those ranges, away from the sun, closer to the sun, in and out. That's what makes some planets habitable, later on not so habitable when they're out of that habitable range of life. And it can be terraformed to make it habitable again. It's
Oh yeah, real
amazing.
estate is just as valuable everywhere that like it is here. Like real estate is thing. So and they move into planets. Moving inside of them is where most of them are in our solar system as a defense mechanism.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know what else I would cover from the Starmaker book. You know what? I'm very, very proud. I haven't looked recently. I haven't been following it. When I let my first book out, I was on Amazon every single day, looking for the reviews, see how's it doing. It was like every day because I had never done it. So this one I don't really do it. But the last I looked, it was #1 in reincarnation. Like that was the category that it ended up in being classified, which I'm cool with that. It was talking about near death experiences. When I was in Peru, which is in the first book, Ceres Colony, it was in Peru. They would drug me and put me near to death, and I was giving information on flights, shipments of drugs. During that time, I accessed a lot of the information that's in Starmaker, so it ended up as reincarnation. So who knows? I'm very proud of that, and I haven't looked. So far, so good. A lot of friends have read it and been very positive. So nobody's thrown tomatoes yet.
It's a fantastic book. Both the books are fantastic, and reincarnation is real. I remember lifetimes in Egypt. I remember lifetimes on Mars. I remember visiting inner Earth memories, different galactic extraterrestrials. QHHT is amazing what it can unearth and uncover in
Hmm.
past lifetimes. That's reincarnation is real. So is near
Absolutely.
death experiences.
Hmm. And it's a science, and it's an old science from the 80s that the CIA was using and had access to.
Mhm.
Um, I'm still continuing to uncover evidence. I mean, it keeps coming. So every time I look for something, I don't know. I hate saying it over and over again, but sometimes I feel like I'll come across evidence that proves the whole thing wrong, but it never happens. It always supports it, that it was real, that what happened to me, unfortunately, was very real.
There's a lot of evidence in science that it is real because Courtney Brown remote viewed Mars, and there's bases on Mars. I had to talk with him about that on a recent show. He's like, the remote viewing shows that Mars is occupied. It's busy territory. Just have to know where to look, and you'll find evidence of machinery. You'll find evidence of crafts. You'll find evidence of a lot of things. William Tompkins said that they were building huge fleets that ended up being stationed on Mars and the moon. Nuts and bolts at first, bit by bit, then replicated. That information, the man could remember with memory what a battle carrier looked like. He had photographic memory. I don't doubt William Tompkins. The man was a trailblazer. You're a trailblazer.
Thank you. To be mentioned in the same breath with William Tompkins is an honor. I was through a third party trying to communicate with him, and we were trying to set up a time for me to meet him in a phone call, and right before he died. So only a few weeks before he passed on. And so I was kind of heartbroken about that, because he's a bit of a hero. His books and his testimony are really important to into the evidence, into the record from the Apollo mission all the way on to where we're at today. So I didn't expect my books to do what they did.
You're sharing your truth consistently. You're very honest. You're upfront. You give testimony, and you let people decide for themselves what it is through the experiences. And you don't have judgment. You are allowing people to be themselves, to listen to you, to share with you, and to be in camaraderie, not competition. I've wrote several books about these subjects too. Every person has the right to share their experiences and communicate with each other and openly discuss.
We all have a piece of the puzzle, and if you care about solving the puzzle, I'm the first to admit I don't know it all, and I just share what I have. It's a piece of the puzzle, and like I said, I have a linear account, so it lets people understand what it's like. For the next person that doesn't, they can say that they did this and pick up, because we all have a piece of a puzzle of something that's been hidden from us for 100 years, and that's very huge. And so for people to do the competition end of it, or the ego gets in the way, I think it's just counterproductive. People are going to be people, man. If you tell your story and you get up here and it inflates your ego and you needed that, then that's great. But people are going to be people, and it's counterproductive for us to fight each other when we're all just trying to get to the bottom of what happened. I've had some critics. I met a critic in person in Sedona a few months ago. I went and did a talk there, and he said, "Look, I don't believe you." And he said it and I was like, "Cool." It would be weird if everybody believed what you and I said right out of the gate. 100% of everybody believed it. It'd be weird. Yes. If everybody believed it, right? So I expect people to be critical of the information. But we were at a dinner party, and he goes, "I don't believe you." And I said, "That is cool." He was very cordial about it. And I said, "But you can't explain away some of the things that I've uncovered. You can't explain away Peru. I found people in Peru. I found the plane in Peru. I found the evidence. There's people involved in the programs in Inyokern. There's evidence. I have evidence." I was like, come to my show. I'm talking on Sunday." And he said, "Look, he was very, very open-minded, but he said, 'Look, we're both just trying to get to the truth here.'" I said, "Absolutely." He thought, "Man, you got screen memories." And I thought, why? If I have screen memories, that's super cool. But why would I have 20 years of screen memories? To what end? I'm just a guy, and what I'm doing really isn't really shattering the globe. It's like not changing a lot. It's just I'm answering pieces of a puzzle that exist. And so that was my thing about that. I said the screen memories, it seems like a lot of trouble to go through to give somebody 20 years of memories that don't really change anything.
Same for me. I have medical knowledge of how the body works, all the organs, body parts, medical procedures, plasma therapy to reverse neurological disorders. From my recovered memories, I got information about different plasma technologies and therapies that can literally help to heal the body. So there's no way I could know this without having learned that in the program.
You couldn't take a guess. And why would they do that? Why would they
Yeah.
give you a fake memory of all those things? It's like, what is the result of you doing that right now, other than letting everybody know? It's just
Yeah.
easier for it to be real. The
Yeah.
other thing is that there have been third parties that identified me. Like you said, the Farsight Institute. There's a lot of there's a great deal of evidence behind my case. I think everybody has evidence if they just go looking for it.
Exactly. And you have made a huge difference because you're telling your truth, you're sharing your experiences, you're letting people learn from you and understand their own experiences. That's helping people. That is, and you're not changing your testimony, you're not taking anything back. You're consistently providing information that is thorough and concise. There's no various weird things in your testimony. It is consistent.
Yeah, it's just the way I remember it.
Exactly. People who are telling the truth, they don't confabulate or inflate experience. They keep on sharing their experiences because they remember more things. They write more books. They do more interviews so others can learn from us and hopefully get the help that they need figuring out what happened to them. This helps many people, and we thank you so much for your generous sharing of your experiences, the books, the interviews. It allows us to learn what is out there, what is the truth.
Thank you. And like I said, there's a real factor that when we hear each other's stories, that it does ring the bell. Like, this is how you get your memories back. There are so many people that have contacted me and said that, look, I don't remember everything like you do, but I remember definitely being involved. And when you look at it and really write down and make sense of it, the same things keep happening to the people that say that they were involved, the same common denominator. So there's no way statistically that would be real either. So this is a real phenomenon. Thousands of people have reached out to me and said the same thing. So it's not rare either.
Life is interesting. There's so much out there going on. We just continue to do our work to share, to be open-minded, and to work together to understand all of this. How can people reach you? How can people find your books?
So I have TonyRodrigues.com, all one word with the S on the end, TonyRodrigues.com. The books are on Amazon. I don't know if Starmaker comes up in the search. I think it does.
Oh, it does. I looked it up today.
It took like 3 weeks when Ceres Colony went on before you could search it. You had to go into books. But TonyRodrigues.com has links to the books. It has links to free interviews. It has a link to my Patreon channel. After I got a lot of interviews scrubbed, I went to Patreon behind a $5 paywall so that I could kind of speak on there and dodge a few bullets, and it's worked. And it's a great community. I put out new every other week. I put out another show, and then I have the groups on there, the remote viewing class, and then I have a intention based one, tier 3, which is I only keep it to a short amount of people. Like, it's capped. There's only so many people. I think there's a few slots left in there, but it caps at like 30 people. And then there's a question and answers that I do once a month, and that's a tier 2, and then the regular one. So that's Talks with Tony. And then on that website, you can contact me via email and set up. I do consultations. I had to charge for those because they were just very busy, and it's work. It's a lot of work. It's like a big chunk of your day to sort somebody out like that.
Oh yeah, I do psychic readings, Akashic readings. I do remote viewing sessions because people want to figure out what happened to them, so I can understand. It takes time to connect to a human soul and figure things out and work things out. That's commendable that you do the hard work that you do, and I thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me back, and good to see you again. It's been
good
far
to
too
see
long.
You too. Oh, well, we can do one of these again sometime.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Totally game. Don't wait till my next book comes out. I'll come back before that.
Well, I knew I checked your website recently and I knew your book was coming out. So I wanted to, it felt beautiful to talk about the first book and the second book like together, because one follows the other. So it's a beautiful experience. And thank you again for being on today's show with us.
Thanks, Ileana.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.